Imagine this: you wake up in the morning, you're told breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and like most people, you reach for oatmeal, maybe a bowl of cereal with milk, or if you're trying to go protein-packed, you fry some eggs and bacon. Sounds healthy, right? Well, maybe not. The truth is, the very foods you've been taught to believe are healthy might be silently sabotaging your energy, your waistline, and even your long-term health. And it all starts before breakfast. What you put into your body first thing in the morning sets the tone for your metabolism, your blood sugar, and even how your brain performs the rest of the day. I'm not here to give you fear. I'm here to give you truth, the science-backed truth that food industries don't want you to question. Because if you knew what was really happening after that bowl of oatmeal, that slice of bacon, or that glass of milk, you'd start your mornings very differently. So let's break it down: oatmeal, eggs, bacon, dairy, the myths, the science, and the reality, so you can decide what fuels your body best. You've probably seen the commercials for oatmeal, smiling families, warm bowls on the kitchen table, a voiceover promising heart health, cholesterol control, and long-lasting energy. That messaging has been repeated for decades, and it's no accident. Oats became the darling of the breakfast world thanks to clever marketing campaigns tied to studies showing they can reduce cholesterol. The problem is, that's only part of the story. And for most people, the way oatmeal interacts with their body has little to do with heart health and more to do with blood sugar chaos. Imagine this: you wake up in the morning, you're hungry, and you prepare what you've been told is the safest choice: a steaming bowl of oatmeal. Maybe you add some fruit on top, a drizzle of honey, or a splash of milk. You take your first few bites and it feels comforting. But if you were to put on a continuous glucose monitor, within minutes you'd see what's actually happening inside your body. Your blood sugar begins to rise rapidly, climbing higher and higher, almost like a roller coaster ticking its way up the track. What feels like slow, steady fuel is actually triggering a significant spike in glucose. The body doesn't leave that spike alone. It responds by releasing insulin, the hormone designed to pull sugar out of the bloodstream and into your cells. For someone who is metabolically flexible and insulin sensitive, that might work smoothly for a while. But for most people, especially in a world where over 90 million Americans are pre-diabetic or diabetic, this isn't harmless. That insulin surge sets the stage for an inevitable crash. 2 to 3 hours later, you don't feel energized. Instead, you feel tired, foggy, and craving more sugar or carbs. You might think you just didn't eat enough, so you grab a snack. What's really happening is your body is responding to the blood sugar roller coaster that began with healthy bowl of oatmeal. This is the part most people never get told. Yes, oatmeal contains fiber. Yes, it has some nutrients, but fiber alone doesn't cancel out the fact that it's still a high carbohydrate food that breaks down into glucose. You can sprinkle on chia seeds, add flax, or slow it down a little with nuts and protein, but the core truth remains the same: oatmeal is not the steady, blood sugar balancing breakfast it's advertised to be. It doesn't matter if it's steel cut, rolled, or instant. The glycemic response is still significant. Think about how this compares to another so-called healthy breakfast. Let's say whole grain toast with jam or a bowl of cereal. The same pattern emerges: quick digestion, rapid glucose spike, big insulin response, and the inevitable mid-morning crash. The difference with oatmeal is that it has been wrapped in the health halo of being natural and fiber-rich. So people assume it's a completely different food category. But metabolically, it behaves more like sugar than anything else. That's why so many people who eat oatmeal for breakfast find themselves reaching for coffee, snacks, or another pick-me up just a couple of hours later. Now, let's look at the role of insulin resistance in all of this. When you consistently start your day with a food that spikes glucose and forces insulin to work overtime, you're teaching your body to become less responsive to that hormone. Insulin resistance doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process, built meal by meal, year by year. But oatmeal, eaten daily as your safe breakfast, can actually contribute to this hidden problem. And once insulin resistance sets in, it's not just about feeling tired or craving sugar. It's the foundation of weight gain around the belly, inflammation, and a higher risk for chronic disease. People often say, but oats lower cholesterol. Doesn't that make them healthy? That's where nuance is important. Yes, certain compounds in oats, like beta-glucans, can reduce cholesterol levels in the short term, but cholesterol is not the enemy. In fact, cholesterol is vital for hormone production, brain function, and cellular repair. Lowering cholesterol by eating something that simultaneously spikes blood sugar and stresses insulin doesn't sound like a win when you look at the bigger picture of metabolic health. It's like fixing one small problem while creating a much larger one in the background. If you were to sit down with someone who wears a continuous glucose monitor every day, you'd see a pattern. On mornings when they eat eggs and avocado, their glucose line stays steady, energy feels stable, and hunger is controlled. On mornings when they eat oatmeal, even with the so-called healthy toppings, the glucose line shoots up, crashes down, and they report feeling hungry again long before lunchtime. This is not theory, it's observable in real time, and once you see it, it's hard to unsee. Oatmeal feels safe because it's familiar. It feels safe because it's marketed with images of athletes, families, and health-conscious people who look vibrant. But when you peel back the layers and focus on what's happening metabolically, it tells a very different story. The story isn't about fiber saving your heart. It's about sugar sneaking in through the disguise of grains, hijacking your energy, and programming your hormones for cravings. For decades, one food has been sitting at the center of nutrition debates more than almost any other. The egg, a natural food that humans have eaten for thousands of years, suddenly became demonized in the late 20th century. If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you probably remember doctors, magazines, and TV commercials telling people to avoid eggs because of their cholesterol content. Cholesterol was labeled the enemy of heart health, and eggs became guilty by association. People were told to eat egg whites only, throw out the yolk, or avoid eggs altogether. That belief stuck with millions of people, and it's one of the biggest nutrition myths we've been fed. Here's the reality. That advice wasn't based on strong evidence. It was based on assumptions that dietary cholesterol directly raised blood cholesterol in a dangerous way. But when scientists actually studied this, the results told a different story. For the vast majority of people, eating eggs does not increase the risk of heart disease. In fact, the human body has an incredible system of balancing cholesterol. If you eat more cholesterol from food, your body makes less of it in the liver. If you eat less, your body produces more. Cholesterol is not a villain. It's a building block for your sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen. It's needed for vitamin D production, and it's a critical part of your brain and cell membranes. Without cholesterol, you literally couldn't survive. Imagine cracking open an egg in your kitchen. You see that golden yolk, and for years people were told that part was dangerous, that the fat and cholesterol inside were going to clog their arteries. But inside that yolk is one of the most nutrient-dense packages nature has to offer. It's rich in choline, a nutrient your brain needs to function properly. Choline is especially important for memory, focus, and even protecting against cognitive decline. Most people don't get enough of it, yet just a couple of eggs can provide a significant amount. Along with choline, the yolk contains fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, nutrients that are hard to get in large amounts from other foods. Then there are the antioxidants lutein and zeaxanthin, compounds that play a huge role in protecting your eyes against age-related damage. Of course, there's the protein. An egg provides high-quality, complete protein with all the essential amino acids your body needs to repair and build. It's bioavailable, meaning your body can use it effectively. Compare that to many plant-based proteins that are incomplete or harder to absorb, and you start to see why eggs are so unique. For such a small food, they pack an incredible nutritional punch. But not all eggs are created equal. This is where the story gets interesting. Picture two different hens. One is living in a cramped cage, fed soy and corn-based feed, never seeing sunlight. The eggs that hen lays are pale, often with yolks that look light yellow. Those are the conventional eggs you see in most grocery stores, and while they still have protein and nutrients, they're not nearly as impressive. Now imagine a pasture-raised hen roaming freely outdoors, pecking at grass, worms, and bugs. That hen is eating the diet nature intended, and then the eggs it produces are completely different. Crack one open, and you'll notice the yolk is a deep orange, almost glowing. That color comes from higher levels of carotenoids, omega-3 fatty acids, and other nutrients that simply don't show up in conventional eggs. When you compare the two side by side, the difference is obvious. One egg is a borderline junk food because of the conditions it was produced in. The other is a superfood loaded with nutrition. This is why people can have two very different experiences with eggs. Someone eating conventional, factory-farmed eggs every morning may not feel the same benefits as someone choosing pasture-raised, organic eggs. The quality of the egg directly reflects the quality of the hen's diet and environment. You're not just eating an egg, you're eating everything that hen consumed and absorbed. For years, people were scared of eggs because of cholesterol, yet modern science now shows us that the real danger comes from the industrial food system that lowered the quality of this ancient food. The egg itself, when raised naturally, is one of the most perfect foods available. It fuels the brain, supports hormones, provides steady energy, and nourishes the body in ways most breakfast foods can't even come close to. Few foods spark as much controversy at the breakfast table as bacon. For some, it's the ultimate guilty pleasure, the smell that makes mornings feel complete. For others, it's the poster child of unhealthy eating, often labeled carcinogenic and placed in the same category as smoking and alcohol. That fear largely came from headlines a few years ago when the World Health Organization classified processed meats, including bacon, as a potential cancer risk. But the problem is, those headlines oversimplified the science. They left people thinking a strip of bacon was as dangerous as lighting up a cigarette, which couldn't be further from the truth. Let's break this down. Bacon, like any food, can fall on a spectrum. On one side, you have highly processed industrial bacon, often loaded with low-quality meat scraps, artificial preservatives, added sugars, and flavor enhancers. On the other side, you have bacon made from pasture-raised pork, minimally processed, cured with natural salts, and free from unnecessary additives. To call both of these foods by the same name misses the point. The quality and sourcing change everything about how bacon affects the body. A big part of the fear around bacon comes from nitrates and nitrites, compounds used in curing meat. You'll often see packages advertised as nitrate-free to make people feel safer. But here's the nuance: nitrates and nitrites are naturally present in vegetables like spinach, celery, and beets in far higher amounts than what you'll find in bacon. In vegetables, they're celebrated for supporting nitric oxide production and blood flow. In processed meats, however, the concern is that under high heat and in the presence of certain proteins, they can form nitrosamines, compounds linked to cancer in animal studies. The truth lies in moderation and context. Eating bacon occasionally, especially when sourced from clean, high-quality pork, is not the same as eating cheap, processed deli meats daily. Now think about the experience of eating bacon with different types of meals. If you grab supermarket bacon, fried in vegetable oils, and pair it with a stack of pancakes and syrup, your body is dealing with a heavy load of processed fats, sugar, and additives all at once. That's a recipe for inflammation, blood sugar spikes, and poor metabolic responses. But imagine another scenario: you cook pasture-raised bacon in its own natural fat, pair it with pastured eggs and avocado, and eat it alongside a plate of leafy greens. In that context, the bacon isn't driving inflammation, it's adding protein and healthy fat to a nutrient-dense, low-carb, balanced meal. The outcome is completely different, and your body feels the difference in energy, satiety, and hormonal response. This is why bacon has been misunderstood. It was demonized in broad strokes, lumped into the same category as hot dogs, sausages, and ultra-processed deli meats that bear little resemblance to the real thing. When researchers group foods together like that, the results can be misleading. The average person eating bacon in those studies was often eating it with white bread, refined oils, soda, and other processed foods. It's not the bacon alone that's the problem, it's the entire lifestyle and food environment it usually comes packaged with. The important piece of the conversation is sourcing. Pasture-raised pigs that forage naturally produce meat richer in omega-3s and lower in inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids compared to factory-farmed pigs fed grain-heavy diets. Their fat composition is healthier, their nutrient profile more robust, and the end product far different from conventional bacon. When you eat bacon from these animals, you're consuming a food closer to what humans have enjoyed for centuries before industrial farming altered the equation. Balance matters, too. Bacon doesn't need to be the main course or a daily staple. It can be an accent food used to add flavor, texture, and satisfaction to a meal built on whole, nutrient-dense foods. 2 or 3 slices paired with vegetables and quality protein are very different from daily plates overloaded with greasy processed meats. It's about context and moderation, not absolute avoidance. The bigger lesson here is that blanket nutrition advice often ignores quality. Just like not all eggs are equal, not all bacon is the same. The way the animal lived, the way the meat was processed, and what you pair it with at the table all determine whether it supports health or works against it. By choosing better sources and eating it mindfully, bacon shifts from being a so-called villain to a food that can absolutely have a place in a metabolically healthy lifestyle. Dairy is one of those foods that divides people quickly. Some thrive on it, enjoying yogurt, cheese, or a glass of milk without any problems. Others feel bloated, congested, or sluggish after even the smallest amount. This difference often comes down to biology, quality, and how the dairy itself was processed before it reached your plate. The truth is, dairy isn't inherently good or bad. It's a complex category of foods that can either support health or create problems depending on the person and the source. One of the biggest factors in how people react to dairy is lactose. Lactose is the natural sugar found in milk, and to break it down, your body needs the enzyme lactase. Many people, especially as they get older, produce less lactase. That's why lactose intolerance is so common, leading to gas, bloating, and digestive discomfort after drinking milk. But even among those who can digest lactose, dairy can still create issues because of other components like casein proteins. Casein, particularly the A1 form found in most conventional cow's milk, has been linked to inflammation in some individuals. On the other hand, A2 casein, which is closer to the proteins found in goat and sheep milk, tends to be better tolerated. This is why some people feel fine with goat cheese, but struggle with a glass of regular milk. Processing makes another huge difference. Think about the milk most people buy in a supermarket. It's often ultra-pasteurized, which means it's been heated to very high temperatures to extend shelf life. That process denatures proteins and destroys many of the natural enzymes that could have helped digestion. Raw milk, which is controversial but closer to what humans consumed for centuries, still contains those enzymes and beneficial bacteria. For some people, raw dairy feels completely different in their body compared to ultra-pasteurized milk, even though it technically comes from the same animal. Then there's the matter of what the cow ate. A grass-fed cow grazing on pasture produces milk higher in omega-3 fatty acids, conjugated linoleic acids, CLA, and fat-soluble vitamins compared to a conventionally raised cow fed corn and soy. The quality of the diet directly shapes the nutritional profile of the milk, butter, or cheese it produces. There's also an important hormone conversation around dairy. Milk naturally contains growth factors, one of them being IGF-1 or insulin-like growth factor. IGF-1 is a hormone that plays a role in cell growth and repair, which can be beneficial in the right amounts. But consistently high levels of IGF-1 have been linked to increased risk of certain cancers and weight gain because it stimulates growth pathways that, when overstimulated, can fuel disease. Drinking large amounts of conventional milk daily may push IGF-1 levels higher, especially in people already dealing with insulin resistance or metabolic issues. This doesn't mean dairy automatically causes disease, but it highlights how context and quantity matter. A small amount of full-fat, grass-fed yogurt is very different from multiple glasses of conventional skim milk each day. Most of us grew up with the message that milk is essential for strong bones. The image was simple. Drink your daily glass of milk, and you'll avoid fractures and osteoporosis. But modern research paints a more complex picture. Calcium is just one factor in bone health, and it's not as simple as how much you consume. It's about how well your body absorbs and uses it. Vitamin D, vitamin K2, and magnesium all play critical roles in directing calcium into the bones instead of leaving it in the bloodstream, where it can contribute to arterial calcification. Populations with low dairy intake, like parts of Asia, often have lower rates of osteoporosis compared to Western countries where dairy consumption is high. That suggests it's not milk alone that determines bone strength, but the overall nutritional context. The story of milk equals strong bones was more about marketing than science. It's also worth noting that the fat in dairy matters. Skim and low-fat milk became popular because of the war on saturated fat, but removing the fat from milk strips away many of its most beneficial nutrients. The fat carries vitamins A, D, E, and K, all of which are fat-soluble. Drinking skim milk gives you the sugar without the fat-soluble vitamins that help your body use calcium effectively. Full-fat dairy, especially from grass-fed cows, not only provides those vitamins, but also has a healthier fatty acid profile that supports hormones and satiety. So dairy sits in a unique place in nutrition. For some, it's a source of valuable protein, fat, and micronutrients. For others, it's a trigger for inflammation, digestive issues, or hormonal imbalances. The difference comes down to tolerance, sourcing, and processing. A wedge of raw, grass-fed cheese or a spoonful of full-fat yogurt can be a nourishing addition for someone who digests it well. A carton of ultra-pasteurized, skim, conventional milk filled with A1 casein is an entirely different food. Picture two mornings that start the same way. You wake up, you're a little hungry, and you head to the kitchen. On day one, you scoop oatmeal into a bowl, pour in milk, maybe add banana or raisins. On day two, you crack a couple of pasture-raised eggs into a pan, add a few slices of quality bacon, and slice half an avocado. Same person, same morning. Two very different metabolic stories unfolding inside your body. First, the oatmeal morning. You take those warm spoonfuls and they feel wholesome. Within minutes, your digestive enzymes go to work breaking the starch in oats into glucose. The lactose in milk adds more sugar to the mix. Even if the oats are steel cut, the carbohydrate load is still significant. Glucose slips through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream, and your blood sugar begins to rise. If you had a continuous glucose monitor on your arm, You'd see the line climb like a hill after a few bites, then keep climbing as you finish the bowl. Your pancreas senses that rising glucose and releases insulin. Insulin is the key that unlocks your cells so sugar can enter. In the short term, that sounds helpful. But the bigger the spike, the bigger the insulin surge needed to control it. High insulin shuttles sugar into muscle and liver first, and when those tanks are topped off, into fat storage. That's why a breakfast marketed as heart healthy can silently stimulate fat storage, especially if your muscles aren't depleted from intense activity. As insulin does its job, blood sugar starts dropping. Often it drops fast because the surge overshoots the mark. That's the crash you feel mid-morning, yawning, edgy, reaching for coffee or something sweet just to get through. Cortisol may kick in to help free glucose from storage to stabilize you, which can make you feel more wired than focused. Hunger hormones wake up. Ghrelin whispers that you need a snack. Cravings show up because your brain associates the earlier glucose spike with quick energy and wants another hit. Inside your cells, the message is clear: we're burning sugar today. Fat burning enzymes turn down. Metabolic flexibility, the ability to switch between carbs and fat, shrinks a little when this pattern repeats. Over weeks and months, fasted insulin can inch upward, a sign that your body is becoming less sensitive and needs more insulin to do the same job. Even if your morning oats are topped with chia seeds or a scoop of nut butter, the fundamental signal is still a glucose spike first and a crash later. Now switch to day 2. The pan sizzles. Eggs and bacon send a very different signal. You take a bite and digestion begins, but the macronutrient profile changes the timing. Protein and fat leave the stomach more slowly than simple starch, which flattens the glucose curve. Your blood sugar may barely nudge upwards, sometimes staying nearly flat. Insulin still appears, but in a modest, controlled way. Protein also nudges glucagon, a hormone that helps maintain normal blood sugar without the roller coaster. Instead of store everything, the message sounds more like steady, balanced, build and repair. Amino acids from the eggs deliver raw materials for muscles, neurotransmitters, and enzymes. Choline from the yolks supports your brain and liver. The fat coming from the yolks and properly sourced bacon provides a dense fuel that doesn't yank glucose around. Satiety hormones, peptide YY and CCK rise with the meal, telling your brain you're satisfied. Leptin sensitivity improves over time with meals like this, so the "I'm full" signal gets clearer. What you feel on the outside mirrors what's happening inside. Instead of a surge, then a dip, your energy glides. Mental clarity sharpens because you have fuel on board that releases slowly. If you're fat adapted, your liver can also produce a small amount of ketones between meals, which the brain loves for clean, efficient energy. You notice fewer cravings, not because you're using willpower, but because the hormone conversation after that meal is calm. Look at both breakfasts through the lens of inflammation. The oatmeal bowl often comes with added sugar or sweet toppings, and the milk may carry proteins some people don't tolerate well, nudging the immune system. The eggs and bacon plate can go either way depending on sourcing. Factory, farmed bacon fried in seed oils sends a different signal than pasture-raised bacon cooked gently in its own fat. Quality is a lever. Better inputs yield a better hormonal and inflammatory response. Zoom in on the next 3 hours. After oatmeal and milk, insulin is high and fat burning is dialed down. If you sit at a desk, your muscles don't soak up much glucose, so more of it is tucked away as fat. When the crash comes, your brain asks for another quick fix, and the snacking cycle begins. After eggs and bacon, insulin is modest, glucagon is present, and your body is free to tap stored fat between meals. You can go 3, 4, even 5 hours without feeling shaky, and your focus holds steady because your brain isn't negotiating with a falling glucose line. Consider the ripple effects across a week. 5 to 7 oatmeal mornings stack up as 5 to 7 glucose spikes and insulin surges. That repetition trains your metabolism toward dependency on frequent carb hits. 5 to 7 protein and fat mornings train the opposite: stable blood sugar, lower average insulin, better access to body fat, fewer cravings. The first pattern makes fasting feel miserable. The second makes it feel natural because you're not white knuckling through energy dips. There's room for nuance. If someone insists on a bowl of oats, adding whole food fat and protein can blunt the spike. Stir in pasture-raised butter, fold in eggs to make a custard-style oatmeal, or pair it with Greek yogurt instead of milk. These moves don't convert oats into a blood sugar neutral food, but they change the slope of the curve and the size of the insulin wave. Still, compare that to a plate built around eggs, avocado, leafy green sauteed in olive oil, maybe a side of salmon or quality bacon, and the metabolic outcome is not close. Breakfast also anchors circadian rhythm signals. A high carb hit early can amplify the natural morning cortisol awakening response, pushing you toward a jittery start. A protein-forward meal steadies that rise and gives your thyroid and adrenal system a calmer runway. Over time, that translates into smoother mood, better stress resilience, and fewer afternoon slumps. There's a body composition story here too. Insulin is a storage hormone. If it's high often, fat loss stalls even when calories look reasonable on paper. Keeping the breakfast insulin response modest protects your ability to burn fat later in the day. Strength training plus a protein-rich morning compounds the effect. Muscles act like a glucose sponge when you need them to, but the rest of the time you're fueled without chasing sugar. If you mapped both mornings on a graph, the oatmeal line would spike high and fall hard, while the eggs and bacon line would look more like calm waves on a lake. One sets you up to snack, the other sets you up to focus. One narrows metabolic flexibility, the other expands it. And if you extend that graph from a single day to months, the distance between those two lines only grows. Most of us grew up believing that breakfast was the most important meal of the day, and that skipping it was somehow harmful. The truth is, breakfast can be either the best decision you make for your health or the worst, depending on what you put on your plate. If your idea of breakfast is a steaming bowl of oatmeal with milk, a glass of orange juice, and maybe a muffin on the side, you're setting yourself up for a blood sugar roller coaster that steals your energy before noon. But if you rethink breakfast, you can turn it into a tool for energy, longevity, and mental clarity. Imagine starting your day with a plate of pasture-raised eggs cooked in grass-fed butter, paired with half an avocado sprinkled with sea salt. Compare that to the conventional breakfast most people eat, where their blood sugar spikes quickly, insulin pours into the bloodstream, and a few hours later, they're reaching for another cup of coffee or a sugary snack to get through the morning. The first meal of the day sets the tone for your metabolism, and when it's dominated by protein and healthy fats, your body responds with stable energy, sharper focus, and better appetite control. This isn't about restriction, it's about fueling in a way that works with your biology instead of against it. Many people are surprised when they discover how simple swaps can make such a dramatic difference. Instead of oatmeal that quickly turns into sugar in your bloodstream, try chia pudding made with unsweetened almond or coconut milk, topped with a few berries. You'll get fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, and satiety without the blood sugar spike. Instead of highly processed supermarket bacon, experiment with pasture-raised bacon, smoked salmon, or even leftover steak from last night's dinner. Protein and fat are your allies in the morning. They keep your metabolism steady and reduce cravings later in the day. Dairy is another piece of the puzzle. If you've always had conventional milk with breakfast and struggled with bloating, acne, or energy dips, consider making a change. Raw dairy from grass-fed cows, if available, offers enzymes and beneficial bacteria that make it easier to digest. If that's not an option, unsweetened almond milk or coconut milk can give you the creaminess without the insulin spike or inflammatory proteins found in many conventional dairy products. The idea isn't that everyone has to eliminate dairy, but to experiment and see what your body thrives on. When you choose better sources, even a splash in your coffee or a small portion of cheese can be nourishing instead of inflammatory. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is realizing that sometimes the best breakfast is no breakfast at all. Intermittent fasting has been practiced for centuries, and modern science shows that giving your body time without food improves insulin sensitivity, enhances fat burning, and activates cellular repair processes. If you're eating out of habit because you've been told breakfast is mandatory, try pushing your first meal back a few hours. Many people notice that their energy actually increases when they skip the carb-heavy breakfast and instead hydrate with water, electrolytes, or black coffee until they're truly hungry. It's not about rigid rules, but about understanding your body's response to food and making intentional choices. For some, that may mean a nutrient-dense meal at 10 a.m. For others, it might mean waiting until lunch. The key is breaking free from the myths we've been taught that oatmeal is always healthy, that eggs are dangerous, that bacon is poison, and that milk is required for strong bones. By questioning those narratives and replacing them with knowledge, you create freedom. You no longer rely on what the food industry tells you, you rely on your own body's feedback. When you take this approach, breakfast becomes more than a meal. It becomes a tool. Every choice, pasture-raised eggs instead of cereal, raw dairy instead of skim milk, intermittent fasting instead of forced eating, signals to your body that you're working with it, not against it. Energy no longer comes from sugar spikes, it comes from metabolic flexibility. Clarity no longer depends on caffeine. It flows naturally from stable blood sugar and balanced hormones. Longevity no longer feels abstract. It feels like waking up with consistent energy, reducing inflammation, and protecting your health for years to come.